Marijuana Nation, just a quick announcement before we jump into today's news. Today will be the very last show of the year as we head into our annual holiday break. This one feels like it was especially well earned because holy moly, has this year been a tough one. We'll be back with episodes of The Daily in the new year, though I will be publishing our newsfeed email newsletter through the end of this week, which you can subscribe to over at mjtodaymedia.com/newsfeed. That goes out every morning around 7 a.m. or so Eastern Standard with all the day's headlines organized by location. I hope everyone has a great and safe holiday at home within your respective bubbles. We need to stay smart through the end of this whole coronavirus pandemic, and it's going to take a while yet. Be well. This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by Greenworks Consults, a company run by a longtime listener to the show, Jason, who's an expert when it comes to helping businesses get better at doing business. Learn more about what Greenworks Consults is up to over at greenworksconsults.com, with works spelled W-O-R-X. That's greenworksconsults.com. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, December 15th, 2020, and you're tuned in to episode 1007 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Another big public offering sits atop the day's news today, with Illinois-based Verano Holdings announcing plans to go public via a reverse takeover of an existing company on the Canadian Securities Exchange, one of the more used mechanisms for legal cannabis companies seeking the public market. The valuation on the company is being set at a healthy $2.9 billion, and Verano hopes to pull in $75 million in capital. Verano has operations in 12 U.S. states with 18 dispensaries and 440,000 square feet of cultivation space. This speaks well to the overall warming of the capital markets when it comes to cannabis. Marijuana Business Daily has more on this if you need it. As we always do, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. There's good progress being made in New Jersey on the passage of legislation setting up a legal cannabis sales program, following the approval of voters last month of a ballot measure lifting cannabis prohibition. Kyle Yeager has a good check-in on this storyline over at Marijuana Moments, with a floor vote on the state Senate expected to come this week after the Senate Judiciary Committee passed the proposed bill yesterday by a count of 6-5. The proposed legislation would allow for the issuance of 37 top-tier cultivation licenses, with an unlimited number of so-called micro-grow licenses held by businesses with 10 or fewer employees. It would also channel a sizable portion of legal cannabis taxes into social and restorative justice programs. As Kyle has it, a full Senate vote could come tomorrow, and a corresponding version in the Assembly is also making progress, so this could resolve soon. A good story to keep an eye on for sure. Kyle holds on to the news stick to wrap up today's top stories with a check-in on developments in Arizona, where voters also voted last month to approve adult-use marijuana sales. Regulators in that sunny state are under the pressure of a January 19th deadline to start accepting license applications, and just released the first draft of a set of industry rules, which you can and should read in full yourself over on Kyle's story. Some of the key bullet points in the proposed plan include a limit of 6 plants per adult for home grow, a maximum of 1 ounce allowed per adult to possess at a time, and a sales tax rate of 16%. The regulations would also set up a social equity program and allow people to petition for the expungement of marijuana-related crimes. If you actually live in Arizona, the state is accepting feedback on the draft proposal, which you can find a link to over at Kyle's Marijuana Moment story. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Greenworks Consults, a company run by longtime listener to the show, Jason, who's an expert when it comes to helping businesses get better at doing business. Jason and his team of fellow process experts are there to help you figure out all the places where you could be operating your business in a more efficient manner. It's just the reality of running a business that it's hard to keep a constant eye on every single part of the operation, which means sometimes you just do things in a way that gets things done, rather than the way that takes the least amount of energy. That's totally fine to do. You don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, but at some point it's worthwhile to go back and tune things up. That's what Jason and his team can do for you. They know how to quantify and track business operations and will help set up metrics for you so that you can make sure you're honing your way in towards higher profits, because that's what this is ultimately all about, keeping more of your money in the bank each and every month. Seize the day, seize all of your potential profits with GreenWorks Consults, found over at greenworksconsults.com, with works spelled WORX. That's greenworksconsults.com. All right, time for the Blitz. To Colorado we go, where the state has, through the month of October, beaten last month's haul for the amount of legal cannabis sold, with the total ticking up over $1.8 billion with 2 months left to go. That eclipses last year's total of $1.7 billion and puts Colorado solidly on track to pass $2 billion. The numbers are a good sign of the industry's health in the face of the ongoing coronavirus, especially considering the hit Colorado's tourism has seen this year. Ben Adlin over at Marijuana Moments picked up on 2 proposed pieces of legislation in South Carolina just pre-filed by Republican lawmakers in the Senate and House that would make medical marijuana legal. The legislation, if passed and signed into law, would allow patients with qualifying conditions to access medical cannabis from dispensaries. Home grow would not be allowed, and the Senate's version of the bill would completely ban the smoking of flower, while the House version would not. So there would need to be some conference committee work there. Give this one a read. One quick note here, I'm super happy to report that Ben Adlin was actually just a guest on our weekly show, Marijuana Today, which you can listen to over at mjtodaypodcast.com. The Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, just issued a memo to government employees reminding them that they are still barred from using marijuana and other drugs and are subject to being drug tested, even if they live in a state with more progressive laws. Kyle Yeager covered this one well and pointed out that this latest memo comes on the heels of a number of similar missives from the federal government as prohibition continues to erode. Canadian marijuana provider Hexo Corp just released its latest fiscal results with a net loss of $3.2 million US for the quarter ending October 31st, a vast improvement over the $133 million the company booked as a loss the previous quarter, mostly due to huge write-downs. The $3.2 million net loss came alongside $23 million or so in net revenue, shaking out to an adjusted EBITDA loss of $330,000. Bloomberg has a good story up looking at some anecdotal evidence that the stigma of working in the legal cannabis industry that was seen just a few years ago is evaporating, with an industry-focused job agency saying that the number of positions it's facilitated has doubled up this year. Particularly those in the C-suite are said to be increasingly open to working in marijuana. Illinois-based multi-state operator Cresco Labs is doubling the size of a finance loan it first secured in January from $100 million to $200 million, saying the extra funds will be used to expand operations in 9 U.S. states while also being used to target new emerging markets. And finally for today, we close out the year's news with an article by GQ Australia looking at the Luxe cannabis brand being soon launched by hip-hop and entrepreneurial legend Jay-Z. The brand is called Monogram and will feature $50 gram-and-a-half joints that are somehow rolled in some fancy way that the company worked 6 months figuring out. Not something I'd probably buy, but there are certainly lots of room in the marketplace for high-end options. Not a bad one to read if branding is part of your business. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again in 2021 with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Greenworks Consults, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today. Today.
One take, Shay. One take.